Hi, I'm Peter, and I decided to buy a small hotel in Portugal and share everything about this journey. I know a thing or two about operating small hotels or guest houses, but I don't know really much about buying a hotel. So I decided to call a couple of friends, experts, and ask them a lot of questions that might sound stupid for them maybe, but I don't know the answers. And before I going to buy something, I would like to clarify a lot of things. The first person I called is David Kijlstra. And David has been a sales director of Zoku, what is a hybrid hotel chain from the Netherlands. And he has been also consulting a lot of different hotels all around the world, mainly in sales and marketing. So I decided to call David first because my idea is to first brainstorm with him different business models and concepts and ideas and clarify what I actually want and need, and then start searching the right property. And we had amazing brainstorming. I expected maybe to talk for 20-30 minutes. We ended up talking for 2 hours. And I asked him if I can record this call, and I'm probably going to ask the same the next friends I'm going to call and publish it as a podcast or YouTube video or however you can call it. So let's today discuss about the criteria. So it has to be somewhere between 10 and 15 bedrooms. It has to be up to 1 hour drive from the Lisbon airport. We were checking this map of the raining in Portugal and like the temperatures. South of the Portugal is just too hot. The north too rainy. It's kind of Lisbon makes most sense. And also from the airport perspective, I checked the data about how many flights and travelers are in each airport. So in Portugal, we have 3 airports: Porto, Lisbon, and Faro. And they are comparing to Lisbon. These other 2 are significantly smaller. It needs to be close to a village or town with at least like 2 restaurants in walking distance. Let's say walking distance up to 10-15 minutes. It has to be fully operational, so it's not a ruin. Ideally, what we discussed, that to not make any big renovations with the rooms, because it's going to be not only expensive, but it will take a lot of time to do like some plumbing and bathrooms and so. Then I was thinking about, and this is a bit tricky, like the budget up to 1.5 million as acquisition price of the property, and up to 15 minutes from the drive to the beach. I see like there is where you have to play is the price and distance from the beach. Like you can be close to the beach, price goes significantly up. More far you're from beach, the price go down. These are like the main criteria. Of course, there are some others. I would like to have an outdoor area, and I think would be nice that if the property is cheaper than that price I mentioned, and it's in walking distance from to the beach and so. But I mentioned like this must criteria, and what what I into the conclusion. So I researched everything what is on the market. I painted the map where I saw where I can see like, okay, these are the areas I'm going to focus on. And the conclusion is that there is really nothing for sale what I'm looking for. And I wanted to discuss with you what can be the approach. So one approach is to wait until something new appears. Another approach can be maybe contacting the hotels that are not officially for sale. I thought that maybe hotels that they don't have they're not performing well on OTA's websites like Booking.com or Airbnb are probably more open to sell. But I'm not sure about it. I didn't contact anyone. I just look on the properties that are for sale. I don't know. What's your opinion about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really interesting is that obviously like the hotel broker market is not exactly like the one for your house, right? It's like if you sell your house, you want as many people to see it. You want it to be like you don't really care about it if you know your neighbor sees it. You just really want to have as many eyeballs as possible. What you more notice on like commercial real estate and also especially with hotels is that brokers are still in charge of a large part of the market. If you have a good relations with a broker, it can really help you to get deals before they're out on a public website, if they even come on a public website, right? A lot of times, especially bigger hotels, they will never come on a public website. They are just being sold because a broker is sharing that. Hence is also the importance for large hotel chains to have somebody in real estate that can create these relations, that goes to these kind of fairs and knows exactly what's happening in the market. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible, right? Also I think for you to start contacting potential hotels, because you want to see like what's out in the market, or maybe people that are thinking of selling. There might be people who are going to be contacting brokers within the next coming years, or they're already in contact. So there might be really interesting strategies, and I've discussed these with a few real estate friends of mine to see, can this work, right? Because I personally think there are very clear indications where you can see that a property might be coming for sale in the coming years. And some people in the comments might start proving me very much wrong, but I think it's definitely the case like that.
So what's the criteria?
Yeah, exactly. So what I did was I went to booking.com, and there's the review scores are very much telling on if a property is interesting. And I think the number one is location. So if a hotel has a high location score, obviously that's a very good indication, right, of if it's an interesting property. But the next up is value for money. So value for money obviously indicates is it worth it? Did people actually think the money they spent was worth it, or was it too high? And with that also usually it means was the services they provided, were they actually living up to expectations, or how was actually the whole room itself, like, or the whole facilities itself? Was it renovated? Did it look clean? Did it look fresh? Was it modern? And so I think that is another really telling factor. And the next one is then just the average review score. So what are they ranking the property as at this moment? Is it a well-rated property as a whole? So that just takes in consideration every factor of a guest stay. But here's a triangle of those three. And if you can see that, if you're able to see that the location is very good, but the value for money is quite low, in combination with the average review score, this might give you a good indication of if it's a really good property to invest in. Because if the location is very good, but the value for money has been dropping over the last couple of years, it might give you an indication that maybe the property owner is giving up. They don't want to spend anymore. They don't want to do renovation. They do not have the money for it at this moment. So I tested this out, right? There was a friend of mine who was going to go visit a location in Germany, and he said that he was going to be speaking to a few owners. And I told him, based upon these exact review scores, or the points I now gave you, I think that this could be a property that's going to come for sale. And this is not a joke, right? I sent him over one property. I said, looks like, to me like a property that could be really interesting, but they're not doing that well anymore, especially in the value for money category. And 2 hours later, he sends me a message. He's like, how the fuck did you know that? He actually mentioned this exact property to me that was going to be coming for sale. So obviously, wow, it doesn't mean that if you have it, it's going to be coming for sale, but it's going to give you a really interesting indication that if you're going to reach... So there are scraping tools for booking.com, where you can just basically take out all their review scores, you can take all their guest information, you can even monitor it over a couple of years or a couple of months. And then obviously the room price is also going to be in there. So what's then really interesting is if there's a property who has the same location score, but they have maybe the same staff score as well, but they are able to charge a much higher room price because they have a better value for money, then that's a really nice indication. You can follow that over a couple of months or over a period of time, and with that it gives you good indication also how big is the upside, right? Is it there in the market? And with this data, you can let it loose on any beach town in Europe, in this example, and basically see, okay, which properties do you think are underperforming and there is an upside possible perhaps also the selling price with this is going to be more reasonable than the other properties, and then contact them one for one. So with that, I guess, Peter, you don't want to do that yourself. You might want to hire somebody of Fiverr or any other service that you create already, like a standardized message, a standardized package, and you just reach out to all of them. I think actually cold calling might be a really interesting one here, because they might receive a lot of these kind of emails, but if you have somebody willing to do this cold calling for you, to actually check to check with the owner, hey, we're this kind of company, we don't want to destroy your hotel, because they're usually very emotionally connected to these properties, right? But we want to just create something really amazing out of it. I think you can find a very high chance of success to start finding properties that might fit the budget, or at least that are not on the market yet, so there's room for negotiation, and to check how are you able to maybe to still come to a deal.
Love it. Let's decompress it. You said too many interesting, insightful things. First of all, I think we should give it the name, David's indicator, because it's
David's triangle.
David's triangle. That's much better. It should have a name. You should brand it, because I believe more people are going to use it. David's triangle. I always look like for this average rating that makes sense, but I love it, the idea that you look into value for money, because exactly that's where you see the gap. When the value for money is low, that they probably don't provide a good service, they don't care, they drop the ball, basically. That's the thing, they drop the ball. On the Buy That Hotel website, we track like all these hotels for sale, and what we are doing, it's we get the rating from public OTAs like Booking.com or Airbnb, or also Google Maps, and show it in the listing. So you see the property, it's for sale, you see the price and all the information, but you also see 9.5 on Booking. Well, if you have all these properties for Portugal in one database, then it's like very easy to put it into spreadsheet and look like what is the average rating of properties that are for sale. And there are common patterns, that you are right, that the properties that are performing worse are for sale typically. But there are some examples like those that are for sale. A lot of people are trying to sell properties that are performing well. They just have a feeling, maybe they have a drink in the evening with friends, and maybe they have an argument like, no, my hotel is worth 5 million. No, maximum it's 2 million. Let's see tomorrow. And they publish it on one of these listing websites like Idealista or Sapo in Portugal. And they don't really want to sell. So that's my conclusion. They just put their like very high price. Like I saw one recently that the price was like 4 million. I know the hotel, I know the location. Realistically, the price is maybe like 2.5 for that property. And they put 4 million and they just like test the waters. Others are maybe doing it like in more consistent way. Like every 3 months they publish the same property. Maybe they decrease a bit the price, but it's still overpriced. Like usually what is on the market is overpriced, and like they don't give you discount, and they try to like find someone, and they have time. Often they have time. So yeah, I came to similar conclusion, but I'm curious like how you say like the idea would be probably to call the hotel. I agree with that. But to who you are going to call? We can assume that we can probably assume that with these small hotels, the person who is managing it's also the owner. But it's not always the case, right? It can be the person can be the operator. But I'm just thinking, if it's not the owner, how you are going to you don't have this public information about the owners of the hotels, right? Like it's difficult to get it. How would you approach it?
Exactly. So this makes it super tricky, right? So indeed, we said that's in the end where, also where the value of a broker is, right? They know the area, they know the connections, they've built up a relationship network, and they basically also know how the market works. So I guess also that's really much where the value is. I think you're able to find it. You're able to call the hotel and ask who's the owner. That you want to discuss something with them. So that's why I do really think cold calling is a very good way to at least to get in contact with these kind of hotels. you can email the hotel on a more of like an info at email address. Again, the nice thing is that hotels are quite responsive to emails that they're getting, right? Because it could also be a reservation request. So if you then more send a not too salesy email where you're just really asking who the owner is, you will get a response on that, even though like the reply rates will not be as high as you might like. Another example would be, and this is really one that I learned from the strip mall guy. So he is the strip mall guy on Twitter. He buys up these traditional American strip malls, and what he usually does, he goes into an area, especially when he knows when something is coming for sale. But imagine that you say, okay, there's these 3, 4, 5 towns in Portugal that you say, like, they are super interesting. I want to buy something over here. And what he really recommends doing is go there with a team and be there for a week and speak to all the local businesses they go sit down on cafes, ask waiters or ask owners, and just basically mention what you're going to be doing. And in almost every time, like, you're going to have this person in the town who is a town know-it-all, right? The person who loves to talk, who knows everybody in the city, knows exactly who to speak to, knows which hotels are going to come in for sale, probably even knows like what's happening in the area in terms of businesses. Is it going well? Is it thriving? What are the problems with the municipality at this moment? And to really live there, to just be ingrained and get to know this person. And he said, like, this one person is worth, like, I mean, sometimes hundreds of thousands of euros, right? Just because they have the whole network. And trying to find this person, it can be quite easy. But in that way, you approach it a little bit on the opposite way. So instead of going directly to a property, you start off with going to a city or a village instead and trying to get to know the whole village in that sense in a short period of time, and knowing, okay, which are the properties that there are hints or rumors about that they might be selling, or the owners are getting old, they might getting tired, they don't have money for the renovation. I think this can be extremely effective strategy instead of immediately going to an owner instead.
Love it. It makes a lot of sense. Like, once you are saying it, it makes a lot of sense. I actually planning to do something like this. So after we discussed the criteria and defined the criteria, for me it was clear that it's going to be around Lisbon. And as I'm on this like nomadic trip with the family, it was easy to decide to go to Portugal. And I booked a place in Peniche, what is like 1 hour drive from Lisbon airport. And that's the main area where I'm interested to look around. So I'm going to follow the advice from strip mall guy. I have some more areas around Lisbon that I want to research, but it's the main one, and I'm going to stay there for almost 2 months, no, more than 2 months. So I think I will get there. My Portuguese is very poor, but maybe I hope I'm going to also improve it a bit so I can have conversation with people, like maybe in some local.
Yeah, and please, if you do so, please let me know or write it online, right, how the experience was, especially in 2 months, right? You should be able to get to know the city super well, the village super well, right? I think I'm really curious to see, I've spoken to some friends, I have seen it can work, really getting to know like the city on a local basis and getting familiar with the right people. But I'm really curious to your experience in this case.
Yeah, that's why I want to like make now a lot of homework and prepare. I don't want to yet start calling the hotels and to do this sales, because I'm going to be there. So it's easier than to approach them and then say like, okay, I can come the next day and we can chat, right? So I'm not some random guy calling them from wherever and trying to buy everything what is there, because I believe there are a lot of these like private equity people who maybe call, or family offices, they just call and try to buy properties on scale.
Yeah, and I think what could be quite nice is, well, if you're staying at a hotel, you could even ask an owner, right? Like, hey, can we have a conversation? I want to know the area. It might be interesting to organize something for groups. So I guess you're then also not in their like immediate common competition. Can you explain me a little bit more about the area? I think if you're able to, I mean, you're a nice guy, so people will trust you, have a trustable face. So in that case, I think you're able to also like maybe have conversations with them where they are already like giving you a lot of the information of things that you can know. They might be able to already connect you to the right people or things that they have heard. So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities to do in that way. And again, there I think the benefit is that they do speak English, right? Hotel owners, most of the time speak proper English.
Yeah, these properties around Spanish is because it's like a surf town. I've been there many times, so it's not like I'm going there first time. I decided based on some data that this is the place. I've been there many times, and I love the area. Basically, all these small type of hotels between 10 and 15 bedrooms are surf houses, or they're like surf related. So I surf, so I guess I will research there more, talking with people, and I will get there more information while I'm going to be there. I'm also came like to conclusion that, but this is more like, no, let's say that it's just assumption, it's not conclusion. It's assumption that we talk about the properties that are not performing super well, that they are probably open to sell, right? But I think that any property is open to sell, because let's have an example of some property that is performing very well. So they have 9.6 on booking.com. So based on David's triangle formula, you are not going to contact them because they are doing well, but maybe they are doing well because they are also like tired, right? Like they are like exhausted because they've been doing this for years. They are putting 100% effort to make this property successful. And maybe they just want to relax a bit and to exit, and they understand that the market is growing. So their property is more expensive than 10 years ago when they bought it. And maybe they think that now is the right time to get out, but they're afraid to publish it somewhere online because their employees might feel threatened that the business is not doing well and the owner wants to close, or they're afraid the competitors might see it, or the guests. I don't think these are like very realistic, like it's reasonable. They are reasonable, these fears from the owners, but as you say, they are very emotional. So I just thought like maybe even contacting, if you think that this is the right property, maybe you can contact even someone some property that is performing well. There is high chance that they are going to ask for a lot of money. So I guess that's the main risk. And then there is something in the middle between like perfectly performing properties and terribly performing properties, that it's somehow mediocre. And I believe a lot of people who came to hospitality business, that most of the people, they have some expectations that they're going to build something nice and successful, right? And if it's like average 8.3 on booking.com, then like, why to do this like for next 10 or 20 years of my life? Maybe I can be good in something else, right? Like I can be good in some other business, and they can be also open to sell, but they are not actively selling. Are these assumptions like completely crazy, or you think that it could work this way?
2 seconds, Peter. Ik ben in de call nog, hè? Ja? And I think there, so if you're already going to be paying like the highest price at this moment, and you're going to be selling it in a few years later again, you might risk that upside is not going to be too high. So if it's more of an investment, from an investment point of view, you might be struggling there a little bit. But for the in-between properties, definitely, right? And I think you probably have to look at those kind of properties, because otherwise you have to do a large renovation that you don't want to do. You really want to be aiming for this lipstick renovation, where you're just mostly touching up the property, again, investing in the public areas, and less on the don't even start on the rooms and the bathrooms and the air codes and everything, right? Because that is going to be a lot of money. And obviously, like, you are a little bit in an advantage that you have insights on markets. You know, like, I think the biggest benefit is that you have distribution, right? And there's almost no private equity fund that has distribution. You know how much people are willing to pay in certain areas or for retreats and what the seasons are. And with that, you're able to put down different offers than what most people are able to do. So I think that is for your biggest benefit. It's something you should obviously take advantage of, because if you're able to do that, you're able to, for example, if a property, you're going to get to see the figures, you see they do amazing during the summer, but almost nothing during the low seasons or the shoulder seasons. That's the moment that you are going to be able to say, if I'm able to have another 20 groups during this time period, I'm going to be able to make a revenue which is going to make this purchasing price more than worth it. So I think that is going to be different. And it's also the same with the properties that are on the map right already. It's like maybe some of them are very expensive, but and nobody dares to buy it because they don't have the distribution, because they will have to be reliant on Booking.com and Expedia and Airbnb, whereas you might be able to already attract companies that you know over there, and with that create a really big advantage. So I think that's either way something super interesting to think about and to leverage as much as possible. I'm very, very jealous of you in that case.
I also have this thinking that, well, it's a real estate investment, so I want to make that investment growing over time, just from the real estate perspective, right? So I believe I can make it successful because of controlling some part of distribution and having some hospitality knowledge, like how to set up properly the rates and do marketing and so. But I'm also looking at, like, is the area going to grow in the future and not? And this is more like a partially a philosophical question. Like, there are no like exact studies like how to define like what is going to be the next hotspot. Like, for instance, in Portugal, I spent like winter of 2017 in a small town called Ericeira. It's like a surf town close to Lisbon. I was there during the winter, working remotely as a digital nomad, and there were maybe three of us, like digital nomads. We're like knowing each other. We were meeting sometimes in the town for beers or coffee. We stayed in different places, and the town was completely dead, And then, more parties started to promote it, including us as Suroffice, and I just believe that that place has a lot of potential. And I'm not saying that it was because of me. I believe I helped quite a bit that it became very popular digital nomad destination. And now you go to Ericeira during the winter, and it became like after like 4 or 5 years. COVID helped a lot. Like, it became like very popular during COVID. And I'm just thinking, like, if you invest like in place like this 5 years ago, you just double your real estate investment by doing nothing, right? Like, you just everything else, what you are like your operational profits and efficiency, it's just a bonus, it's just the plus. But you are growing with the real estate. So I was just thinking, like, what are these like how to define that some place is going to grow? It's going to be popular in the future. You can see some trends. They have like tourism industry publishes the data, and you see like, okay, this place has 10% more tourists over the last 3 years. Like, it's growing. But what can be the other things? Like, I discussed with a friend of mine that it can be maybe in some places, like maybe not Portugal, is that they're opening new Starbucks, that it's showing like that place is becoming like more popular. Do you have some like this, like what can be the data points of defining that place is getting like more popular, or there is some trend?
Yes, I mean, again, really interesting examples. So I have some examples in terms of trends, but I think also a large part of it is gut feeling in this case, and it could also be educated gut feeling. So again, you're going to go to Peniche, you're going to be living over there, and then after a little while, you're going to be having maybe the feeling, or you're going to go to a different village. Why isn't this area growing? It looks like perfect to me, but is there certain indications or reasons why this area is still so dead, or why there are not a lot of hotels opening up over there? So I think a lot of times there's like a gut feeling for that. Like, if you think it's perfect and you know the corporate groups or your kind of people, then you think you will be also having indication of like this area has a lot of potential. There's, like you said, Starbucks effect. You have already like what are the type of restaurants that have been opening up? Are there any restaurants that have been opening up in the last couple of years? You can use Google Alerts for this or Google News for this to see like are there any mentions about this. Same goes for other hotel concepts. I think hostels are a really good indication, right? A lot of times it starts off with the more creative types that are coming to an area, or it could be like surfers that if that's the first people that are coming to a city, then or to a village, and then afterwards like the bigger other hotels might follow. I mean, look at Ibiza, for example, right? It was like this super creative place at the beginning where like all the artists went, and suddenly like the mass tourism followed in its footsteps. And I think all of these data points can be tracked. I think you can almost put them on a map, Peter, to see like if like what is happening in a location like that. Is it growing? Another one is obviously companies or offices. This is very city dependent, right? But are they leaving the area or are they coming to an area? That is also something that you can track. Again, LinkedIn Sales Navigator already going to give you a really good insight on how many people are living in this location. Are they maybe like developers? Are they tech? Or are they remote employees who are living over there? Or are they actually just, is there almost nobody there and is actually the area completely dying? Are there co-working spaces? Is again a really good example of if this area is actually interesting and also livable, right? Not only for the summer months, but as people are going to be there the whole year around. And of course, the type of hotels that are right now, like, are they all in this low value for money, completely summer locations? Or are they actually also some of the hotels that are coming up that have just opened in the last couple of maybe 4 years, and you see there's development happening in the market. And then again, you can scrape a hotel profile like that to see, okay, how are their rates doing versus the competition? Like what are the margins there in between? Are they actually able to achieve a premium? How much are they charging during the low season? Do you see times on their websites when dates are completely blocked out, which can be an indication for either weddings or groups coming over there? So I think there are very like a lot of these different points to look at, but I still think a lot goes back to also to gut feeling, and even that's within real estate, which is very much a numbers business. You should be convinced about this area and be like, I don't understand. If I would get my friends over here, they would start coming back here year after year because it's so amazing, such a good location. I think it very much starts with that. And coming back to your original point, I think I'm going to mention strip mall guy again, because you said like you're thinking about this from an investment point of view. And I love his expression, which is, I don't buy a property because I think the value will go up. I buy a property because I can make the value go up. And that's the same thing what I think you can do, right? Because you know the distribution, you know how to use the right revenue management and marketing techniques, that if you're going to buy a property, you can significantly enhance the revenue and thereby also the value. So I think those should really be connected to each other, right? So that if you buy something, you only should buy it if you really know the value will go up significantly. Otherwise, it's not really worth the investment in that sense.
100%.
And do you?
We are following the same. We are following the same people. I saved actually this tweet from Strip Mall guy about like, because exactly for this reason that how I'm looking on it, that if I'm going to buy something for 1 million, I'm going to buy it with only if I know that in 6 months that property will have value 1.5, but because of me, because I know that I will make the changes, that the property will be more appealing, and I will make the property full. I will increase the rates the right way, that target the right clients, and I will just have much more profitable business and the property. So if I decide like in 6 or 12 months that I want to sell it, I know that it's going to be I can sell it for much more. And this has to be like from the beginning. So it's not like the idea that hope in 5 years the price will go up. No, I know that I want to buy something that the original owner are never going to be able to, because they are just on booking.com and dependent on the seasonality. Because once you are only on booking.com, you are dependent on the seasonality. And if you are in location where is a lot of seasonality and there are no visitors coming, then like booking.com is distributing very few guests in too many properties, and you end up empty. So yeah, that's exactly my strategy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you see happening right now in a lot of markets here in Europe, right? Where, like, Booking.com it's an amazing resource, obviously, to make use of, and obviously you can say a lot of bad things about it, but now at the moment where the demand is lower in a lot of cities, suddenly, because a lot of hotels haven't invested enough in their own distribution, in their own website or marketing strategies or sales strategies, Now they're really struggling with filling up, right? Because Booking.com isn't able to fill up their hotel anymore. And owners who've bought on prices that are way too high or at very little margin, suddenly they're right now completely struggling in these markets that were traditionally doing super well. Yeah, I think, and then again, I'm going to highlight again, you have a large knowledge about the distribution, and with that you're going to have a big advantage looking at these different properties. But what did you have as a gut feeling? And when you were in there in 2016, was it for you already clear that you thought like, okay, this is going to be an interesting market in the upcoming years?
Yeah, in it was in Ericeira 2017. It was very clear for me. It has like all the parameters, and I was then analyzing it like after, like what was the why it happened, because I had that gut feeling, but I didn't know exactly why. And now I observed like the same like happening in more locations. In this case, it's related to surf, and I can compare it with Bali and Canggu because there happened exactly the same thing. So first you have a location that it's beautiful and there is very good surf. And that was Ericeira. It has been like that since forever, right? But it was not so popular for other type of guests. And then it became trendier that these surfers, they attract, like surfers in general are cool. You have surf shops. They attract like more backpackers. And those backpackers come to town. They maybe don't want to stay in surf camps. They want to stay in the hostels. So you can see hostels. And Ericeira was already in that second stage. But you don't have really hotels, and you don't really have like more upscale places. And then the next stage is like after backpackers come hipsters and Instagram influencers because they saw nice pictures and they also want to take nice pictures. Ericeira is very picturesque. That's amazing. That's a great thing. But there are a lot of other locations in Portugal that are as picturesque as Ericeira, and nobody goes there, or very less people go there. And then it's like a snowball. Like it attracts like more upscale brands, like hospitality brands. Like for instance, in surfing, you have surf camps that are more premium, more upscale. Like for instance, La Pointe is a good example. And you see Selina opening like a few years after. And you see like, oh, it's coming. And you see the good one, I didn't realize that you are right, that co-working space is a very good indicator. And Ericeira is a small town. It has like less than 10,000 people and has, I think now like 3 co-working spaces, like in similar towns, you find 0 co-working spaces. So it just says that there are people who live there long term, and they probably work remotely and they work in tech. So it's like this also creates like it's a good indicator when you have there like expats or nomads who are staying there long term. So it's not just locals and tourists. And that's like a good indicator.
Yeah, and I think maybe the one already before this, and maybe I'm going too far right now, but I think like quality coffee, like this really barista-made coffee. If you can analyze like the photos on Google with like a proper AI scraper, you can analyze like there's good coffee shops already there. Yeah. I think they might even be the predecessor before the co-working space, because it makes, if like not only one, but if there's more opening, it already shows that there's more people who are interested in this kind of product within this area, right? Who are able to spend more on coffee. They are like, instead of just going to the traditional Portuguese coffee, which I'm not a very big fan of, but that you see that they are already starting to invest in those kind of things. I think that's a really strong indication for, okay, this area is developing, there is interest, there might be higher spenders over there. So I think it's classic gentrification signs in a way, right?
Yeah. Because once you have already like Starbucks and Burger Kings, that's too late, right? Like that's already that's over tourism. And when you have like TUI and these big brands opening their hotels, that's already too late. So you want to be there, maybe like when these like niche upscale hospitality brands are starting. Like you want to be there around the same time, because once they are there and they're more established, then everyone is coming and everyone thinks like, oh, my property is so valuable because everyone here is opening new business. So the prices, at that time, prices go significantly up. Or people don't want to sell. They want to wait because they believe that the price is going to be much higher. So if they are not forced, they are not going to sell. And now
Yeah.
Ericeira, for instance, is in its peak because the location is too small, and like you cannot build like new hotels really. Like you
Yeah.
had like some old school hotels that were bought by other companies, refurbished and with new concepts, but the supply is limited, so it's too late for this market. You can still go like around Ericeira, what I was looking, like towns around Ericeira. They're often also presented that, oh, it's a hotel in Ericeira, but it's like 15 minutes drive to Ericeira, so it's like completely different town. Yeah, in Peniche is already happening, like this gentrification, but it's not there yet. It's
Okay.
still more seasonal than Ericeira.
Okay, I love it. I love it. Hey, and I still want to come back to one point, and I don't think we discussed it in the last episode or last call, about you. Obviously, you mentioned. I mean, we're talking a lot about Portugal, but in terms of from your experience, right? Travel has to be optimally over there. How do you see that with there's a twofold question: train versus flights? Right? Like, do you already see that there's companies who right now like, no, I don't want to travel by flights anymore. We want to only travel by train, right? You at least hear there's more indications and demand for that. And how do you see that with? I mean, do you already have like an optimal travel time calculator? Like, I think you shared a tool with me once, right? Where you can also see like if a company is located in, for example, London or Amsterdam and Berlin, like what is the best location to meet at? But how do you see that right now? Like, does it really matter? Because I can imagine also like if there is a straight Ryanair flight going from London, Amsterdam, and Berlin going towards Roma or towards Lisbon, like obviously the travel costs are going to be a lot lower, but they might have then more budget available to spend on other things. But how is that for you? Is it a big
So
focus right now for companies?
I see that with trains, it's a big trend, but it's mainly like for companies that have headquarters in, I would say, Berlin, London, Amsterdam, Brussels, Paris. Like these are the cities where the clients want to like go somewhere by train. And in that case,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Like if you have a property that it's on the train line, because often the employees from the cities, they don't have cars, so it's not like, oh, we have offsite 1 hour and a half drive from the city, let's meet there. So you need to arrange the transportation. In that case, companies want to do it like with the train, because booking the bus is also like a bit complicated, you know. So you see that trend, but sometimes I have a feeling that it's more like, oh, we would like to do this, but then they realize that the place is maybe not going to be so cool and it's not so easy, and maybe it's better to fly somewhere. But it's definitely a trend. In my case of Portugal, it doesn't matter much because people are going, like my target group are going to mainly to fly there. But if you are targeting a Portuguese market, like Portuguese guests, I would definitely consider it. Like for instance, Spanish doesn't have a train. Like you can get there only by bus, and you are kind of limiting the demand. So that's why at the south of Portugal in Algarve, you have locations like the train is going directly to Albufeira, and it's a
yeah,
very strong like it's probably the most touristy town at the south because it has like a lot of demand from by train from Portuguese, while to other places you then have to go by car or by bus or something, what makes them less attractive. But if you go directly from the airport, then it doesn't really matter. And yeah, we have this, like in Sri Office, we have this tool, it's called Location Finder, and you put there different locations where your team is located. It's focused on remote teams. And so it can be like 1 person in Amsterdam, 5 people in Paris, 8 people in New York. And it will calculate you, it's built on the API of kiwi.com, and it calculates you the most optimal location where to meet. So from this perspective, Lisbon is interesting because it has a lot of direct flights, for instance, from the US. You can fly there from New York, you can fly directly to Lisbon. So Lisbon airport is interesting. But what you are saying is a very valid point, like from the risk perspective, that Portugal as a market is dependent on the flights, right? So there are tourists coming by buses or cars, but typically from Spain, and it's maybe segment I'm not going to target. Like I'm open to any type of guest, but this is not really the target. So my type of customers are flying by plane, and if Portugal decides to limit the demand, what they are actually doing right now, it's a big
Really? I
problem,
didn't know
right?
that.
Because Portugal made the strategy of the country was like very open. It was easy to get the golden visa for people who want to live in Europe. It's the tourism boomed, and there were like a lot of houses in, especially in Porto and Lisbon, that were in very bad shape. There were ruins, and the government wanted to incentivize people to buy, to refurbish. So a lot of investors came who built like Airbnbs and hotels. Once you build this, then you need the tourism. So the government supported tourism, and now there is a lot of tourism. Like there are a lot of places that have problems with over tourism. So what is happening? The government started to milk that number of tourists. So for instance, they increased the city tax from, I think was €1 to €4 in Lisbon. That's a lot. If you stay in like upscale hotel and you pay 400 per night, so increase by €4 is not a lot. But if you are staying in a hostel and you pay 30 and 34, like you are limiting more budget tourists, right? But also the issues are with the airports, that the government see that, oh, there are a lot of flights coming here, there are a lot of airlines that open new flights, let's charge them more, right? Like, because that money from the airport is going directly to the government. Plus they have their own airline, TAP Portugal, that is becoming less competitive comparing to other airlines. So this way they can like easily play with the market, because they have a government as monopoly. They can increase the fees, the taxes for the airlines. And it's already happening that you fly, like I have a lot of friends who live in Lisbon, and they say like, oh, I want to go to Amsterdam, and the flights are €300. Well, the same thing is happening in Amsterdam, that the airport became way more expensive because of like the fees. And then like you have cheaper airports like in Italy, like in Milan or Bologna. Ryanair created their hubs. The cities decided, like, it's a free market, so the cities decided we want to attract more tourists. We lower the taxes for the flights, and it's like much cheaper to fly to Rome, for instance. So if you are a company that want to organize offsite, or you are a group of friends that wants to meet somewhere and everyone is in different place in Europe, and you have flights for €300 and you have flights for €100, that's going to be a strong data point to make a decision, right? And you might end up in Rome because it's cheaper. So this is what I see as a big risk of Portugal, that they can decide to go this direction and milk because like, why not to get more money from tourists? And the flights are going to be so expensive that it will filter that, like what you described, that you have like a budget tourist and rich people, and then there is something in the middle. And yeah, the people, like budget people, they will stop traveling, but these people in the middle, they might decide to go to different locations. They will not stop traveling, but they will go to Italy or they will go to Spain.
Yeah. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and still, I think like the most important thing I think to highlight is that with like the kind of concept that you're looking at, right? The nice thing is that you're going to be dependent on all these different target audiences. So they're still quite similar into the product they're looking for, but you would be able to shift, right? Like let's imagine this corporate demand would be shrinking. You could still be falling back on these sports groups. You could be falling back on weddings. You could open it up on Booking.com during the summer months. Like suddenly you have really like a property that is not gonna not be too reliant on all the economical factors that are involved. Whereas a lot of your competition, like or at least like the hotels in the area, they will be that, right? So I think obviously in this case we're going to be betting probably, or you're going to be betting on one location in Portugal to start off with. But I think with a little bit of learning, I think going to be able to like replicate this in so many different markets, even maybe in the end that are then becoming interesting on an earlier stage. You're even looking in with buying that hotel to upload properties in Costa Rica, right? Or is that still secret?
No, they are already on the website. So we have Costa Rica and we already have Spain. We didn't announce it, but we already started to add Spain.
Oh, really?
yeah, so that the idea is like, yeah, if this works, then it probably makes sense to replicate it to create like some kind of a network of these like small hotels for groups. But I think that's like that's too far.
Yeah.
But I'm very open to be like that's why I'm also chatting with you, and I'm also going to calls with a few more people. Like I'm quite opportunistic about it. I don't want to be emotional. Like, hey, I love Peniche, for instance, that I want to buy there something, and I because that's how people usually like when they buy these like small properties. They're just emotional. Then they overpay. They ignore some risks or trends in the market, and I look more on these like big players like private equity and hotel chains, and they are purely analytical, right? Like they don't care about like if it's Spanish or Portugal or Italy or Costa Rica. They're simply looking on it like it needs to make sense as from the business perspective, like what is going to grow, where are the opportunities, and then they try to acquire. I'm trying to follow that market. I don't want to end up buying something and then being miserable because I'm not making any money and I will be forced to sell it for lower price, right? Like that's the worst case scenario, but it's happening. It's happening very often to these like small business owners. So I'm very open. Like think about other locations. I just decided for Portugal because it's the market I know the best, and for me it's the most predictable what I can do there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think again, also like when you mentioned about these hotel chains, right? They usually go in it from a complete numbers point of view. They want to have all the certainty already in the market, calculated in before entering it on the same degree. Whereas then, obviously, the other opposite is then the people who are just going there with buying it with the heart. And I think they're just in between. You're going to have a very interesting opportunity for you, where you're going to be able to make a step earlier than just hotel chains, but you can have it analyzed better and again have the demand better than a person that just buys it because they have such a love for a specific city. And again, I think like a lot of it also comes back to how are you going to be marketing it, right? And then I think that should be, so obviously that's not something that you can really calculate in before buying it, but using the right tools, using like, I think coming back to social media, which is still so undervalued in the hotel industry, what I still see happening 9 out of 10 times is that hotels are using Instagram in a way to publish photos of their same rooms, the same cup of coffee every single time, instead of leveraging like it's crazy, like leveraging like short form videos to a way that to really attract them and become like have them become part of the funnel. It's just so underutilized at this moment. And again, following into the footsteps as the person we mentioned before, Isaac French, Ben Wolf, these people who just create a really nice experience hospitality. You don't have to copy like their whole concepts because they're very luxury, high-end experience focused, but at least the principles in terms of marketing, I think with that you can create a much stronger demand than any hotel out there, right? And again, leveraging these different target audiences, with that you can have a super solid business case. And I can only imagine that it's going to be very successful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with this with the social media because I already have experience with that when I was running this co-living co-working space. The only marketing channel was technically the Instagram. Like we just had the
Really?
Instagram and posted like a nice pictures. At that time there were no even videos. It was just nice pictures, and it was like 3,000-4,000 followers, and it was enough to fill out the property with like 12 bedrooms because you just target these people. And now these days with social media you can have much bigger reach. You can like fill out the properties with hundreds of rooms with the right strategy, working with the influencers and so and so. At that time, like there were no really like influencers, and it didn't work this way. But it was like what 2013 between 2013 and 2017. But it was already at the time it was very clear, and I was the one creating the pictures, and I'm not like a photographer or anything like that. I just like you learn like some basics and using some filters, and you just try to be creative and create the story. I think people buy the story, like nobody cares about the picture of some mug on the table and things like that, what you mentioned that hotels are.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, huge opportunity in that sense. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to to follow along with the journey. And again, also I'm looking more right now here into the Netherlands, also in Sweden. Actually, probably will be working with a property right now of only 40 rooms, which we're going to be helping to set up a new concept for. They were very much chain reliant. They're now going to be switching to doing it everything themselves. And I just see, right, like all the opportunities are there because they were so chain reliant, only using their channels. It's just now already, like when we just analyze it, we already saw 4 huge markets, right? And we're like, nothing is being done with it at the moment because the chain doesn't allow this, or at least doesn't encourage this. It doesn't make the tech available to create good relationships in that sense. There I'm like, okay, there's just so much opportunities over here. But yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting the upcoming years for either ways for hospitality.
I noticed one thing that's maybe the last topic inside I want to share with you, that on the Buy That Hotel, like when I was looking on the properties for sale, I was checking those that are for sale for a very long time, right? Like you can track it, and I noticed like the most difficult to sell, and I'm also hearing it from people who are selling, so it's also more anecdotal than like not only from the data. It's very difficult to sell something between like 20, 25 and 50 rooms, because the small properties, there are a lot of buyers, a lot of people who want to buy them for different reasons. Like rich people want to have a big house for the family, or it can be for hospitality, it can be for different things when you have like 10-bedroom villa. And once it's getting bigger, you start to have like more professional buyers, and there are less and less of them. And we discussed like what is the optimal number of rooms and so and so. And I see that the hotels that are like purchased by the private equity family offices, hotel chains, are like with 50 rooms and plus. And now we are talking about the small towns, countryside, beach. I'm not talking about the cities. In cities, there is demand for any type of property. But if you have like a hotel more in the countryside in a small town, that is not super touristy town, maybe like not so popular, and it has like between these 25 and 50 rooms, you basically don't have buyers. Nobody wants to buy it. What is, in my opinion, very good opportunity. I'm not looking on that range because of the budget, but maybe that's the opportunity. Maybe that's where I should look on. Like, do you have the same observations like with your consultancy and when you're talking to hotels?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's like you said, like for private equity, especially again if you're going to be having a more traditional hotel concept, as we've mentioned already in our last call, is that when you have less rooms, just the margins start becoming too low, right? It's just you're going to need a lot of staff covering a small number of rooms, and especially if it's not going to be like a self-service building, it's going to be quite complicated to make it a really feasible business case. Also, again, because they're usually so poor at properly using marketing to their advantage, sales to their advantage. They're usually in the hands of OTAs and using them in order to fill up the property. Just the risk is going to be too big for them. So obviously that is something to take into consideration for you as well. If you're going to be buying a big a hotel, is that in the end, if you would want to sell it after a couple of years, it might be better to do that with a fund, right? That you sell not one hotel or one property, but you sell 4 or 5 suddenly. So suddenly you might be selling like 250 rooms or 300 rooms at once, and that becomes more interesting for a private equity firm instead of just selling one property in one location in Portugal. But yeah, I do agree. It's because with that price, or like that range, you're outpricing like the passion buyers, and it's too small for private equity firms. So I do think there's a very good opportunity. But then also, I would want to leverage the room rates, right? I want to try to optimize the room rates to the highest degree possible, in order to also make it worth for you and to make the business case so good in the end, right? When you'll be selling it, it's also that if a firm will be buying it, it's going to be for like that they see that the profit levels are just so interesting that it becomes a really good business case for them as well afterwards.
Amazing. I think I have a lot of inputs for the homework, so I can move on. Thank you for all these insights.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm excited to work together on this, maybe in the future as well, and perhaps we'll be recording the next call or one day in one of your hotels instead. I think that would be the best case scenario.
Hopefully.